Edit.
Whether you are trying to transcribe something you've heard on the radio, whether you have an idea in your head you're trying to turn into written music, where do we put notes in time is going to connect into the notion of pulse and meter. And in this first video, we're going to dive into some ear training concepts around the notion of what would be a fitting time signature for a musical idea. Pulse is a regularly recurring feeling of stress in music, while meter is the organization of pulses into primary and secondary levels. To actualize meter into musical notation, we use time signatures like 4/4, like 2/2, like 3/8, like 5/16, and so on to indicate the number of pulses in a measure, that's the top number, and the rhythmic value that we notate as the pulse, and that's the bottom number, at least in simple time signatures. And we'll get to compound in just a moment. Compound does it a little bit differently. So the first thing we're listening for when we're determining meter in a pulse of music is whether the pulse is dividing into multiples of 2 or 3. If the pulse is evenly dividing into 2s, so let's say this is our pulse, 1, 2, and 3, and the pulse is giving us eighth note subdivisions, we say that this is simple meter. So, twinkle, twinkle, little star. This is going to be an example of a simple meter because all of the beats are dividing equally in half. If we instead, we're going to do this with divisions of each beat into 3s. So let's say we're talking about Pop Goes the Weasel or something. How does that go? All around the mulberry bush, the bum, da-dum, da-da-dum. Each one of these beats is going to 3s. We'd be notating this with a dotted division of each pulse, and then we would be beaming each one of these bad boys into 3s. This then is an example of a compound meter, and we would then be saying, the rules are different here as I mentioned, that we are now talking about the lower number of the time signature, meaning each one of these subdivided beats, yet the pulse is actually them divided into 3. And so we have 6 eighth notes, but if we divided those 3s equally into 2s, we get 2 beats. So that is the rule for compound meters. Let's listen to an example where we're going to try and ascertain what is the meter in a piece of music and talk about some of the options. Because an important thing when talking about what time signatures the possibilities are, this top number that organizes how many pulses there are in a measure is going to be something that will be very, very obvious for us to ascertain. There's going to be a strong sense of rhythmic patterns that keep reinforcing these groups into numbers of 2, 3, or 4, so on. The bottom number as to whether or not something is written in 4/4. Let's say that we just have regular 3 beats with an eighth note, 2 eighth notes at the end. And let's say the quarter note is notated as 120. 1, 2, 3, 4, and. There's nothing saying that this could also be notated as 4/8. And the eighth note is 120. This is not something that we can tell from our ear. This is just something that the arranger or the composer decided that they were going to notate the music as because it was going to be the easiest to read. As long as things are given a clear sense of what the pulse is and it's given a steady tempo, there's not an easy way for us to know which is one way or the next. So, oftentimes when we're listening to a piece of music, there's not only one answer. It's not to say that this needs to necessarily be in 4/4. It could also be in 4/8. It could also be in 4/16. But pervasively, this is going to be something that is a simple meter. And if there's a very strong sense that this is in multiples of 4, not in multiples of 2, we would say that this is a simple quadruple meter. So let's go ahead and listen to something and see if we can tell some of the options for what a possible meter read would be for this tune. So here we go. So if we're listening to this, hopefully we're hearing there's this pervasive sense of 3s and a 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3, and 1. And so that rhythm here, there's a pickup to it, bubba bump bump, and so 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3, and. We would say that this is a kind of triple meter because there's 3 beats per bar. So this is going to be, a triple meter of some kind. And an important thing to note is that there are, these are dividing equally into two. If we're saying that this is a very fast tempo, let's say this is quarter note equals 180, a very fast beat. We're trying to get a sense of, is this compound or triple? Even though this is dividing into a sense of there being threes. 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3, and 1. Each one of these beats is dividing equally into twos. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1. So this is going to be a simple triple meter. This could, in this case, we're notating it as 3/4. I would also venture to say that we could say that this whole thing is in 3/8. We could say that this is 3/8, notated as 180. In which case, we could even, just to be clear about it, let's go ahead and even talk about getting the actual pitches here, just to get some good practice. So let's say this is do, mi, fa. There we go. 16th notes is the subdivision. So, mi, fa, so. 8th, 16ths. So. Get rid of this guy. And it was like do, so, do. Ti, do, re, do, ti, la. These are all 16th notes. Dum, bum, 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 bum. Bum, bum. And then it goes on from there. Dot, dot, dot. So on and so forth. You might also kind of hear this as maybe you don't want to say this is a very fast 180. Maybe you think this is a much slower. You're feeling a very strong sense of these organizations where the beat, the primary beat, is actually these downbeats. And you want to say, no, this is not 8th note equals 180, not making it a simple triple. You think this is a dotted, in this case, dotted quarter note, because we have 3 8th note durations in each bar. And let's say that's let's divide 180 by 3, which would be 60. In which case, this would then be a compound meter, because each one of these is dividing into threes. I hope that this breakdown in musical meter helped you feel more confident and transcribing and understanding a rhythm. Remember that duple, triple, and quadruple has to do with the grouping of repeated patterns into a bar, and simple and compound has to do with whether each pulse is divided into twos or threes. If you have any thoughts or questions on what we've covered, go ahead and let me know. I'd love to hear how you're applying these concepts. Until next time, keep practicing and making music, and I'll see you in our next video.